Dr. Oz.
Your hero and mine. He's just walking around saving people. They're dropping like flies, but he's right there. He's Dr. Oz, everybody.
Well, you're very kind, Bobby. I tell you, I wish it was just me. They had a great shout out I want to give to these folks at Newark, the Port Authority Police. These young men had never done CPR on a person who actually had collapsed before, and they stepped up when they mattered. That's the message for everyone who's listening right now. You can all save lives.
So you're getting off an airplane. You're down in the baggage terminal. What do you see? What do you remember?
My daughter, who was a couple feet behind me, yelled, "Daddy, Daddy!" And as a dad, when your child's alarmed, it matters. So I turned around to see what had happened to her, and I realized it wasn't her, but this man had face planted, collapsing right in front of her. I immediately tried to feel for a pulse. There was no evidence that his heart was beating. So in fact, he'd actually died before he collapsed, which is what sudden death is about. 300,000 people in this country have that a year. I flipped him on his back. He was a big burly guy, so it took a little effort. But when I got him on his back, he looked like he was a eggplant, that color, purple, just dark. And at that point, you don't have a choice. So I ripped his shirt, started doing chest compressions. There was a scar on his chest. He'd had prior bypass surgery, which is what I do for a living, heart surgery. So he obviously had a heart condition before this all started. As I was doing chest compressions, the officer Croissant, that's his name, walked over and said, "Can I help?" He'd been there. I just hadn't seen him. And he'd never actually done CPR, but he wanted to help and he knew what to do. He'd practiced. So he took over the chest. I needed to get to his airway because there was foam coming out of his mouth, which is what happens when your heart stops beating. The blood locks up in your lungs and you begin to have material coming out of your mouth. That's horribly dangerous because it blocks the ability to breathe. So as I was opening his airway and getting his tongue out and putting action into his body, another officer had run back with a defibrillator. Defibrillators are those things you see in the glass boxes when you walk in any airport, but they're all over them. In your building there, you probably have one. Most people just never notice them, but they are incredibly important because if you rip them out of the box and put the two patches on your chest, the machine will tell you what to do. So this machine confirmed that I was right, that the heart was not beating. It told us to clear because it was going to shock. And then it did just that. It shocked him. He jerked up in the air, like if a movie scene was being shot. It's exactly what it would look like. The difference is in real life, usually the heart doesn't come back that often. The survival rate's about 1 in 5. This man, and it was a miracle, his heart bounced right back. It started beating. He started to pink up. As I pushed more oxygen into him, he changed from that purple color to the normal, healthy color. And by the time the EMS guys had gotten there, I don't know, 10 minutes later, he was starting to come around. He knew he was in the airport. And I just talked to his wife, texted, and he's doing very well. He's in an ICU, but doing very well. It's stunning. And Bobby, I know you speak about spirituality issues a lot. When you're in a crowded terminal and there's absolute silence and you just feel the soul-sucking experience of death and you can change that, I mean, it makes you want to go out and learn CPR right now.
Whenever this happens in front of you and you know it's you or nothing at this point, do you start to get nervous and tight, or have you been doing this on such a high level for so long, you're just like, all right, another day, like I'm focused, I know what to do, let's see what we can make happen?
Medicine's a calling. I think everyone in our field realizes that there are obligations and opportunities. Often it's expressed because you look in someone's eyes and you have a connection and you can help each other. Sometimes it's an urgent event. I'm a surgeon, so I'm used to dealing with urgent issues. That stated, there's always butterflies, not because you're nervous about doing something, but you don't know if it's going to matter. And you never will, unless you do everything you can. It's sort of like life. And so when you do your best and, hopefully it works out, you just feel that feeling, that sentiment that everything you've done was worthwhile. And that's why you work so hard at what you do. The reason you study those pharmacology textbooks so perfectly is because you don't know if getting that one extra question right is going to make a difference between someone surviving. In the case of Joe on Monday night, because those officers studied their CPR when they were given the class, even though they never thought they'd ever use it and never had used it, it saved his life.
Dr. Oz is on with us right now. Just a couple other mentions here. In 2013, you helped a guy who had collapsed running a marathon in Salt Lake City, Utah. Were you in a cape? I think I was looking, or was that in Ohio where you saved it? What was the thing where you were in a cape helping somebody out?
I was in Utah. I was wearing a costume. It was a fundraiser. And as part of the fundraiser, I was just joking that I was Superman and everyone else could put capes on and we could run money and raise run the race and raise money for this philanthropy. And it just so happened I had my cape on when the guy collapsed. And he literally came across the finish line and just twisted and fell. He's actually from Ohio, so he's running in altitude, so he didn't understand what impact that had. We were able to save him too, by the way, and I've stayed in touch with him, but that was not planned.
You want another one? There was a guy back in 2013. He was hit by a cab in New York City. Is that right, Dr. Oz? And you were there?
This is a wonderful woman. Her name is Sean. She's from Britain, a tourist, and she's a dancer. And this cabbie ran off the road by accident, crushed her legs, and it actually amputated her leg. So when I got to her, she was dying because she had lost her leg. And I'll tell you, the real hero there, everyone always applauds my role, which is basically just to encourage the plumber who had gotten there before me, who had taken his belt off, and he did what a plumber usually does. He'd squeezed off her leg so she wouldn't bleed. And I just gave him comfort that he'd done the right thing. We made sure the belt was the right pressure, compressed the wound, and got her into an ambulance. And she's been in constant contact, just got married. I actually went to England to help get her a prosthesis for her leg. But, Bob, you bring her up, she changed my life as much as I may have impacted hers. Because when I saw the resilience of a woman who was 18 years of age, with her whole life in front of her, coming for the first time as a tourist to New York, continue to live with that same upbeat attitude and not let this take her in a dark place, it gives all of us confidence that we can make the most out of whatever we're given and it'll work.
Dr. Oz is on with us. If you don't mind, can I ask you a few just health questions while we have you?
Bobby, I love you. I love what you do for people. So you ask as many questions as you want.
All right. Listen, nobody's busier than Dr. Oz. Like, he's doing heart surgery, he's doing TV shows. Okay, let me start with the vaccine. We heard a couple days ago that everybody should have it by the end of May. How do we feel about everything opening up? What is your feeling on this?
My birthday is June 11th. I erroneously predicted last year that we'd be okay by then. But this year, I think I'm right. But if we get 60, 70% of the population vaccinated by May, which I think we can do, if people ask the right questions and get curious about this vaccine, and we can actually increase the supply. We have major U.S. companies now partnering up, vicious rivals working together to make more vaccines faster than ever imaginable. We'll have enough for everybody, which means that we can now even out the playing field. Everyone will be equally safe because these vaccines really work well, Bobby. The chance of dying in any of the three vaccines is almost zero. Think about that. Now, I'm thinking about dying from the actual COVID vaccine virus, not from the vaccine itself, which is, of course, pretty, remarkably safe. So these are really good numbers for us to start with. We just get the needles in people's arms.
Our producer, Eddie, has been on this diet. Matthew McConaughey did it to be a character on Dallas Buyers Club, where he had to play a character where he was sick with, I believe he was suffering from HIV or had AIDS
that's
at the time. But he's just been eating 2 cups of vegetables, 5 ounces of fish twice, and 2 eggs. And he's lost 20 pounds. Would you tell him how bad this diet is?
Well, as long as you're nutritionally intact, and that's not a bad place to start, it's reasonable. I would not go on a diet that was less than 1,200 calories a day for any prolonged period without a doctor being involved. But if patients need it, we will put them on lower calorie diets. Matthew McConaughey, who I've had on the show recently, by the way, is a incredibly spirited soul and can really focus in on losing weight like he needed to for that movie. But in general, most of us, the mere mortals in the group, just want to be on the same darn program for our entire lives. And keeping a calorie that's more than 1,200 calories but less than 2,000 will get you there almost always.
I want to ask you about the show that's airing today, March 4th. You guys are talking about Jerry Harris from Cheer, who was arrested. What are you guys getting into on this show?
I'm fascinated by why people mess their lives up. I mean, what is it that compels people who reach remarkable heights to make horrible mistakes? Now, he's not convicted yet. These are all allegations. But I have people on the show who dealt with him directly. There were 2 13-year-old twins that he was sending texts to. I'm going to share what I can on the program of these images just because it's pretty graphic. But you realize that this young man, Harris, has a problem. And it's a problem he was able to cope with. I don't know if there are other issues in his past that created additional issues for him, but it needs to be addressed. And the bigger story here is young athletes in gymnastics or cheerleading are subject to horrible abuses repeatedly. And the bodies that are supposed to protect them, the organizations that are supposed to be looking out for them, don't seem to have focused in on how much of a risky situation they're in. It's destroyed USA Gymnastics. It's hurting the cheerleading field, and I'm sure similar cases of abuse exist in other child sports.
And then on Friday's show, which is interesting to me, you guys are talking about, curbing COVID. Do most doctors that you know and talk to, are they like, we fully believe in the vaccine? I fully believe in the vaccine, but you still hear murmurs from all these different directions. But are most of the smart guys, you guys that have studied this, you guys are in, right?
I think we're wired in, do our homework, studied hard. I bet 95% of doctors are strongly supportive of vaccines for a bunch of reasons, including the fact that they seem to be really safe. We don't have 5-year data. So I'm not going to disrespect people who make very reasonable arguments about why there's still concerns out there. But when we have the real risk of not just dying of COVID, but getting long hauler syndrome, 1/3 of people who have COVID seem to have problems that go on more than just a couple of days that they got a fever. Why would you want to go through that? The vaccines work better than we would ever expect. It is a silver lining around the horrible black cloud of COVID that we have demonstrated that done well, scientists can achieve remarkable advances. So let's take advantage of it. Let's save some lives.
All right, there he is, Dr. Oz. Got a couple great shows today, tomorrow. You guys check those out. Always with the wonderful advice and always saving people's lives. He's our hero. He's our hero, Dr. Oz. Hey,
thanks, Bobby.
Great to talk to you, Dr. Oz. See you soon.
Stay safe.
It's a Bobby Bones Show.